Okay, welcome everyone. Just checking that you can see the slides. Should have our names on there, myself and Catherine, as well as Jenna, who I should have deleted because she's unable to be here today. Jenna is from Rocket Science. They are a grant management partner, so we'll talk to you a little bit about how they can support later on. Yeah, we're both Catherine and I actually job share, so our role is policy and programs officer for community funding, and we work in civil society and sport team at the GLA, or Greater London Authority, Mayor's Office. Yeah, we're based in Union Street on the days that we're in, but we're all at home today. So yeah, nice to have you here. Yeah, like Catherine said, we've got a number of slides. Hopefully we've just kind of we won't read through every single slide, we'll pull out the key bits that we think will be useful, but we will be sharing these afterwards as well. I'll send these to Steve, so you'll get a copy, so don't need to worry about taking loads of notes. Is this me or you, Catherine? I can't remember. We'll just alternate just to make it a bit.
Okay, so yeah. Shall I go then? The aims of the fund. So this is a great fund actually, because we are looking to support London communities most affected by COVID-19, and the idea of the fund is to help them shape their recovery from the pandemic. It's aimed at smaller equity-led organisations and ones that are less likely to perhaps get funding and less experienced in applying for funds and receiving grant funding. The application form, we've tried to make as straightforward as possible. Obviously, we still need to know about you and your organisation, so there are questions and a few of them. We've tried to make them as simple and as straightforward as possible, along with, if you are successful, the monitoring and evaluation process, we hope, is very straightforward as well. And your projects, if you do go on to apply, should show that they are meeting one of the following Mayors Building Strong Communities mission outcomes, which are: Londoners are supported to shape their communities post-COVID-19, so therefore meeting new needs that have emerged since the pandemic. Unheard voices are amplified, and so communities are heard and have influence and control over the decisions that they make in their communities. Feelings of belonging are increased, and loneliness and social isolation are decreased, because we know that a lot of people suffered with being isolated through the pandemic. And feelings of connection within and across communities are increased. So relationships are strengthened between neighbours and communities. And so when thinking about making your application, it will have to meet one of these mission outcomes. So do please bear that in mind.
Okay. So in this is the third and final round of this grant fund. And specific to this round, we would like to know whether your project is going to address the cost of living crisis, which we just call the COLC for ease. So we know that Londoners have obviously been significantly impacted by cost of living crisis. And so really any project that enables groups to do something nice, for example, attend a knit and natter group, elderly people going to a lunch club, they're able to go into a warm environment, perhaps have a warm meal, meet others, become less isolated. All these would fit our cost of living crisis criteria. We have, even in round 1 and round 2, where this wasn't a criteria at all, if you look at the projects and actually what they're doing, the majority probably will meet this criteria in some way. Essentially, a lot of the time, isolated people who are potentially on low income, have less disposable income in this crisis, are able to leave their homes, meet others, as I say, in a warm environment, and do something nice, which they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So it's something that's a free service, or it's subsidised. In the frequently FAQs, the frequently asked questions document, which we have on the webpage, which will show you where they are, and we've got some just project examples there in a bit more detail, which you can have a look at. It's important to say that if there are two, it's not essential criteria for this, but if there are two very similarly scored projects and one of them is going to address this, and one of them isn't, or can't demonstrate how it will be, then the applicant that is clearly addressing the COLC would be prioritised over the other one. it's a mayoral priority for us at the moment, and so that's the reason why we're bringing that in.
Okay, so this final round is for microgrants only. We have a funding pot of £200,000, and the grants that you'll hopefully apply for are between £1,000 and £6,000. Previously 5, but the maximum is 5, but we've increased this to meet some of the cost of living crisis issues that organisations are facing. As Steve said, the applications are open kind of now, and the submission date's the 13th of March, so a couple of weeks' time. Once received, the decision notification, if you're successful, will be the week commencing the 26th of June 2023, and we would like the earliest start date is 24th of July after the award is finalised. And because this is the final round of this fund, all projects must be completed by June 2024. I just want to say, if there's any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat, or we will answer them at the end of the presentation. But if there's anything burning, just raise your hand and we'll do it.
Yeah,
there's only a few of us.
Good point. And just to say, in round, we'll just, if at all of interest, in round 1 we had 240 applications and we funded 47 projects. In round 2 we had 140 applications because we made the... I think we can hear a bit of background noise there. Yeah, it's gone mute. Round 2 we had 140 applications and we funded 41 projects. And in round 3, it's difficult to know how many will receive applications, but we expect to fund around 30 projects-ish. So yeah, people had quite a good chance, particularly in round 2, of being funded. Okay, so in terms of who can apply, sorry, is that someone?
No, sorry, it's me coughing. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, in terms of who can apply, like Catherine said at the beginning, this is very much a fund that's targeted at smaller, like your grassroots groups or organisations that have projects that will involve communities that have been particularly impacted by COVID. Now those groups need to show us that they've got an annual turnover of between £0 and £50,000, and that's in the last set of financial accounts or financial, whatever the document equivalent is. We've set those limits on purpose so that grassroots, smaller organisations and informal groups will hopefully feel more encouraged to apply, as well as those who may have faced particular barriers before in being able to apply, and also thinking that they've got a chance of being awarded. So I'll read these out quickly. There's not too many. So you would need to be one of the following: registered charity, a charitable incorporated organisation, a CIO, a CIC, which is a community interest company but limited by guarantee, then a company limited by guarantee company, a CLG, constituted group or organisation, accepted or exempted charity, community amateur sports club, or community benefit society. And also to add that applicants or groups need to have at least 2 trustees or directors or management committee members, whichever is relevant, who are unrelated. And they should also have a charitable dissolution clause within the governing document. We can answer any questions about that if you have any, also to the end. No. Okay.
Okay, so the next slide is quite important because we have groups and organisations to apply. So if you're not speaking, just mute yourselves, please, because we can just hear a bit of background noise. Thank you. So yeah, really important. Organisations must be equity-led, and our definition of equity-led is where at least 75% of the trustees and at least 50% of staff members have personal experience of the issues they're tackling or the communities their projects are supporting. And so we want projects to be kind of like really embedded in the community and, led by the communities they're going to serve. What's really important is that organisations and groups should identify activities that had a positive change in people's lives during the project timeline. So we want it to be something that's going to impact communities quickly. It's only going to be a year that you have to do your project from start to finish. And applicants must be permanently based in London and with a London-based correspondence address. So we will not fund anything that isn't based in London and hasn't got a London correspondence address. So hopefully you will all meet that criteria.
Cool. Thanks, Catherine. And just to quickly add, we know that this is always in the guidance as well, but we know it's not always possible for every group to be led by those that the project is there to support. Like, for example, a project that's supporting young toddlers who can't speak very well. So within the application, we ask everyone to state yes or no as to whether your group or organisation is equity led by that definition that Catherine read out. We've also got a not possible option for you to tick if that's the case. And if you select that, you'll simply be prompted to tell us why it's the case for you, why it's not possible, and how decision makers have like relevant skills and experience. So using that example of with the project, that organisation, for example, might consider themselves to be equity led because the parents and carers of the toddlers are represented as trustees and staff members. So yeah, if you tick not possible and you give a really reasonable explanation as to why and how alternative representation has been considered, then you would absolutely be considered for this. But if you tick not possible and didn't give an adequate response, then you wouldn't. So yeah, just to mention that. Okay, we won't, this is one of the slides we won't read all out, don't worry, but what we won't fund, I'll just give you like sort of 20 seconds or something or so just to have a look at that. I'll shut up now so you have a browse through. So it's hopefully quite self-explanatory there. I guess just a couple maybe to pick up that we sometimes get asked about. General organisational staff costs, these are here, but just to highlight, we will obviously fund project management related costs for staff members that are employed. Sometimes we get asked, what percentage of project management costs that, and we haven't, purposely, we haven't put a percentage attached to that. And someone said, would 15 be okay? Like, yes, that sounds, fine, but it's very much dependent on the project itself, I think. So, yeah, if you've got any questions about that, happy to answer. But, we wouldn't be looking for a huge proportion of it to be management, project management fees. Yeah, and organisation overheads. We can't cover general overheads. We often get asked that. Okie doke. There we go.
So now a bit of the boring stuff about the required governing documents. We would expect our charities or organisations that are applying to have the following, which are the memorandum and articles of association or constitution, a charitable dissolution clause, bank statement dated within 3 months with the organisation name clearly stated, and financial documentation. So this will be accounts for the organisation's last full financial year, must not be for a partial year. And if you don't have a set of accounts, you can just provide us with your organisation's income and expenditure sheet or financial document equivalent. We just need to know that, you have money or what your financial position is. And if your accounts do not include your last income, such as with a company micro accounts, please provide an income and expenditure document. So we just need to know what's coming in and what's coming out of the organisation. So they're the documents that we require when you do your application.
Thank you. And if you'll be asked to show those either at application stage or if you've been successful at due diligence checking process. Excuse me. If you can't do that because perhaps you're probably a new group or organisation, or you're not constituted, then you do have the option of going through a sponsor. Next slide. So yeah, as I said, if you're not legally constituted, so for example, it might be a mutual aid group or an incorporated group, you would need to go to a registered sponsor organisation, and they would meet all the eligibility requirements except the annual turnover or the need to be equity led. So what can I pick out from here? Just some facts about a sponsor really. They should be registered with Company House or the Charity Commission for England and Wales. They must be registered in England. They should have received income in the last year and have 3 trustee directors or management committee members. And then this sponsor would be, they absolutely do need to know your organisation. You need to know each other, the work that your organisation is delivering. We would need to see a list of the required documentation for their organisation. Any relevant safeguarding documents would need to be from your organisation, so the group running the project. Hopefully that makes sense why. If the sponsor group, or if you don't have any liability insurance for whatever reason, that would need to come under their policy. Essentially, this registered sponsor would need to provide a letter. We provide a template confirming that they're happy and aware of the application and are willing to hold the funds really under their name. They're not involved in any project delivery at all. There are 2 different types of application forms on a web page. So you've got web application form for constituted groups and one for unconstituted groups with sponsor. Any questions about that?
Okay, so the next slide is all about community-led projects. And by that we mean projects must be community-led. Our definition of that is that the people benefiting or taking part who have been affected by the pandemic must be involved in design, planning and delivery of the project. And so examples of this are activities designed and led by the community. An example is a neighbourhood group or a road who've come together to design a project that's going to be benefiting the community. It could also be an organisation where staff and volunteers are from the local community, and the community participants are based on a shared interest by location. So that could be like a park group, for example, like making improvements to a facility that the whole community are going to benefit from. Or an organisation that has co-designed activities with the local community. So that could be like parents of carers, for example, that have come together and designed an activity that then benefit that community. So you've designed it with an organisation. So that's our kind of like examples of community-led. And when you apply, it's really important to tell us who you're supporting. It's really important we know what this grant is going to actually support, and an explanation of how their chosen communities have been affected by COVID-19, because that is really the emphasis of the whole fund, or how the pandemic has made these problems worse. So when you're doing your application, do please bear in mind that we need to know how the communities have been affected, or if they have been made worse by the pandemic.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, so we just thought it'd be useful to, I mean, we shared these in round 1 and round 2. These aren't real projects. These are just sort of made up headlines, really, that would meet one of the 4 Building Strong Communities outcomes. Just because we know that some any kind of guidance is sometimes useful, but we do know that community needs across the capital are super varied, and so we expect and hope to receive applications across a broad range of projects. So like we've had celebrations and festivals, intergenerational projects, storytelling, like cultural activity, working with young people with particular mental health need in a certain area, the list goes on. But yeah, just some, oh, sorry, I'm just moving the thing. I'll go back. But just, yeah, again, I won't read all of these out, but I'll just give you a 10 seconds or so, just to have a read of the headlines.
There are also some examples on our webpage as well of the projects that we funded for round 1 and round 2.
Yeah, good point. So I'll just read out maybe just one here. Where's one? Which one should I do? Weekly mental health support groups for young people who are experiencing anxiety about their futures due to unfavourable labour market conditions because of the pandemic. Or like weekly walking activities for the LGBTQ plus community who may have experienced social isolation during the pandemic. That's just to give you an idea. And in turn, we often get asked whether the projects need to be new. Nope. We strongly believe if something's already working well and clearly having impact, then those activities should definitely be considered for funding. We ask you to tick on the application whether your project falls into new, more, being slightly different, or repeat. And sounds pretty obvious, but we do have explanation in the FAQs about what we mean by each of those. Just to say, if it's not new, it is really important just to tell us how your project is adding value. So what extra is it bringing? Okay. And onto the application process.
Okay, so if you've gone through all this and read all the guidance and you're thinking, right, I'm ready to apply, we've tried to make it, as I said, as simple as possible for people to make an application. The first step would be to complete the eligibility quiz. And that's really important to do because it will make sure that once you've completed the quiz, you'll know whether you are eligible to actually complete your application form, which would be the next step. And what's also important is that applicants can apply through video, audio, or written answers, 5 minutes per answer. So if you didn't actually want to do a written application, you do have the option to apply through those different mediums. Shortlisted applicants may receive a follow-up call or email from assessors just to gain more insight into the project or clarify some answers provided. So please do make sure we have a contact of the person who's going to be able to answer those questions for us. It just speeds up the process and will help possibly to clarify some issues that might make your application more successful to be shortlisted. And then if you are successful, we've got like quite a good timeline for when you get your money. So you'll be advised via email that you've been awarded the grant. And then our grant management partners who are Rocket Science will request documentation via the application portal and carry out the checks, which they do diligence checks. Once all of those have been met, we will draw up our funding agreement. And then full payment of the entire grant will be paid within 7 working days of receipt of the funding agreement and all conditions are met. Monitoring evaluation will be a requirement of the grant. It's quite light touch, but what we would say is if you're successful, there are lots of people here to support you with that if there are any queries or issues. But we feel it's pretty straightforward. And it's stuff that you're probably collecting anyway. And projects will begin from the 24th of July 2023. And remember, you have a year to complete your projects.
Thank you. So just picked out key things we'd like to know within the application. Like Catherine said, we have tried only to ask questions that we really need to know about your organisation, about your project. I think about, when you're applying for a grant, a bit like telling a story. So it's important to set the scene clearly for the reader and just don't assume that they don't know anything about your application, about your organisation, what you do, or your community that you're working with. There's definitely no secret formula that means, funding will be released, and know that, people like Catherine and I, who genuinely care and really want to fund all of these amazing sounding projects often. So please just make it as easy as you can. Don't feel like you need to use jargon or anything like that. Just keep it really straightforward and concise, and just set the scene really easily for us. Guidance is provided for the questions, so please do use that, like some prompts, and please just urge you to read the FAQs too. They're not too long, so it just might help with anything that's relevant to you, to your organisation, as well as obviously the guidance. So you'll be asked who you are and who you represent, what you do and why that is, the activities that you are planning for this project, and specifically as a result of our funding, how you will involve your community. So like we've said, we want to know who that community is and how they've been particularly impacted by the pandemic, or things have been worsened by the pandemic. But how will you involve them? You know, sometimes we get people saying that our community has been involved, or they have been consulted, but they didn't. It's really useful. Those better scoring projects applications will tell us when you engage with them, how you engage with them, what came out of that engagement, that you will use as part of this project. So that's always really useful information, so we can see genuinely how the community have been involved and how their voice is being heard. And essentially the difference that your project will make, so the impact for those taking part in what you're doing. Okey-doke.
Okay, so once you've made your application, obviously we will be assessing the projects, and this is like a wide range of people across the GLA that do this. And the assessment criteria areas that we consider, and ones that you should really focus on, are the strength of the project idea and how much of a good fit it is for the fund. So we keep going on about the fact that projects should be addressing communities that have been like disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So that's what we mean by fit to fund. Is it actually meeting that objective? How involved the targeted benefiting community have been in, how involved the targeted benefiting community have been and or will be. So whether the impact of the project for those taking part is clear, and also whether it's good value for money. So we want to know that, you know, that's not to say that it has to be like benefiting 500 people. It just means that you need to explain how well or how the money is going to be used, and whether, you know, good value can be kind of like, I don't know, it can be kind of like assessed in different ways. It doesn't mean that it has to be volume to make it good value, is what I'm trying to say in that. How accessible the project is going to be, and whether that's been factored into the budget. We want to know about the risks. It's important, if there are risks, that you identify them and tell us about them, along with any actions as to how you're going to like lessen those risks. Again, we need to know if the organisation is community-led. Another important thing is if the organisation has not been funded by the GLA in the last 3 years, or whose funding has been received from the GLA over the last 3 years, must amount to 50 grand or more. So if you have been funded by us in the last 3 years, do let us know, and it should be hopefully less than £50,000. And also to bear in mind if the project addresses the cost of living crisis. If we have similarly kind of like projects that have come in, we will be kind of like looking at this additional criteria to make sure that the projects we fund have a really good geographical spread across London, and equally a good spread of themes. So we want to kind of like fund projects from different kind of like areas, so art and culture, children and people, food, mental health and wellbeing are examples. If your project has a greening angle, so by that meaning an environmental impact, so it could be a parks project or like a nature project of some description, please let us know if it has got that angle. And also important to let us know if your project involves really volunteers and or increase their participation as well. So there's just some of the things that we will be bearing in mind and considering when we look at your applications. So it's good to keep these things in mind when you're actually applying for the fund.
Cool. We won't spend too long on this, but thought it might be useful to pull out a few of the FAQs, just some ones that we often get asked. So Catherine, do you want to fire me up?
Yeah. So I'll choose a couple. Could your funding be used to support a one-off event?
Yes, absolutely. So long as it meets one of the project mission outcomes, that's fine.
Wonderful. And one that I think is quite important, can we apply in a partnership?
No, not in this round. So previously it was possible in rounds 1 and 2 because they were small grants projects. We had a mixture of small and micro grants, but for this final round it's only micro grants, which are obviously smaller amounts of money, and so we didn't think it was as realistic. Obviously you can still work with, you know, through referrals and organisations like that, but not when you're both coming into this in a partnership.
Okay, and as I've just spoken about volunteers, should all projects be supported by volunteers?
Okay, so they don't have to be, no. We know that certain groups are less represented in what we call like formal volunteering, and that informal volunteering is in fact happening in more places than we realise. So we'll probably assume that a lot of projects will involve support from volunteers in some form or another. We're really interested, however, to know about any plans you might have to attract and involve local people as volunteers, those people who might not usually take part in community activities. So yes, you'll be asked about it in the application, just because we need to report on it and how many people are involved in the project, but it's not an essential criteria.
And we have lots of answers to frequently asked questions in our guidance as well. So you should find pretty much an answer to most things.
Is there any other questions that anyone wants us to go through there? Anyone that's relevant to anyone?
Nope.
Okie doke. Next slide. Is this Neil? Well, yeah, go on.
Tips for applying. So when you apply, we do recommend that you kind of like you can change the owner of the form to allow multiple people to complete the form, but the owner is the only person who can make edits. This will all become very, very clear when you actually do the application. You can create read-only access for people in your organisation or group by clicking the eye icon and send it to their email addresses, but you will still remain the same person. You will still remain the only person who can edit the application form. You'll be able to start your application form in draft with other people via email in your group or organisation by clicking the letter icon beside your application form name on your application portal. Please make sure you save and exit your application. You'll get a copy of your application by email, and save regularly. That's why you don't lose any of your information. And there is a different link to resume your application, and we will provide, so Rocket Science, our grant management portal, will provide this link in your application form, as well as the email you receive when you save and exit your application. But I think the biggest tip is just to save everything as regularly as possible, because you don't want to lose your information.
And just to touch on the support, this fund is available for people applying. So you can contact, like we said, our grant management organisation, Rocket Science, by phone or email up there. You can book 20-minute support calls for any Tuesday during the application time period. We're a Tuesday today, so I don't know if they've got any slots available, but if you did want to talk to them, it's probably certainly worth trying. Come prepared with a particular question about your application, having, you know, absorbed the fund guidance and FAQ already. So sort of in addition to that, they can't sort of, you know, write the application, refine an idea, but they certainly can help with, you know, helping you understand any of the guidance that you might not be clear, the remit of the fund, any eligibility queries, and obviously the queries of the forms that you have as well. They are really, really helpful. And the feedback we've had from applicants have found them very helpful. And then we've also got our specialist support groups. Do you want to?
Yeah, of course. So if you have additional needs and the standard application form isn't accessible, you can contact Rocket Science. And if one of your groups identifies with any of the following, you can contact them for some support for your application form as well. And so applicants, I'm not going to read them out, but we have 4 groups here which are identified, and we have consortium partners who are going to help you with your application if you need it. So there are the details up on our screen now. You will just contact them and they will arrange a time to speak to you.
Cool, thank you. That's us done. Just say this is available in like the application, the document, everything's available in large print and also easy read formats. And one of our inclusion partners, Inclusion London, did an information session in BSL as well. So if for BSL users, so if you know any organisation that would find that helpful, it's all on the webpage as well. I'll stop sharing now, and yeah, anybody, any questions, fire them at us. Oh, she says stop sharing. There we go.
Yeah, it stopped.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Amanda and Kathleen. That was a very comprehensive and helpful run through the grant process. And some very helpful guidance and tips there. So I think that's really, really useful. So yeah, just open it up to any other questions. I think a few people did join us about 15 minutes in to the during the presentation. I'm staying off screen because I keep getting messages saying the internet is unstable. So I'm just trying to keep things on track here at the moment. But if anyone's got any questions, very happy to sort of deal with those.
I can't see the chat at the moment. I'm having a bit of issue with this. Can anyone see if there's any questions in the chat?
There's nothing in the chat at the moment. I've got it up so I can see if there's anything there. Can't see anything at the moment.
Okay.
But we will, we will send the slides out, and we will we'll put the recording up on our website as well, so that people can go back and revisit, and we'll send you a link to that when we've got that up on the website.
Can I just ask a question? Because I support a lot of my clients into volunteering roles, I just feel that there's not enough things that we can sort of say thank you to them for. So I'm thinking on the lines of maybe you know, setting up, you know, maybe getting some funding at a later stage to sort of organise some events for the volunteers, because the volunteers that I work with, most of them have got either a learning disability, a physical disability, you know, additional needs, and I feel that the hours that they put in to some of the organisations, there's literally nothing that, you know, there's nothing that we can, what's the word I'm trying to use? Yeah, just to basically say thank you, for them, and all, and to let us, you know, organise something, you know, maybe once every couple of months, get all the volunteers together. Maybe we go on trips, maybe we do, you know, some outdoor activities as groups, and to get all the volunteers maybe to meet one another, because none of my volunteers know one another personally. You know, they've never met up in a social side of things, and yeah, from my perspective, I think that'd be quite a nice sort of idea. But I just wondered, would that be something that you might
consider?
Yeah, consider.
So I think on the face of it, potentially yes. I guess, you know, it would be we obviously need to know a bit more about the community, you know, the volunteering community that you would be supporting, and how they've been these people have been particularly impacted. Did you say a lot of them are carers? Sorry, I might have misheard that.
No, so a lot of the ones that I support into volunteering have like additional needs, or, you know, they come from maybe one parent families, so they haven't got any incomes as such as a family. Yeah, so just to say thank you, really.
Yeah, so, you know, you could identify the fact that that however the pandemic has particularly impacted them, and use examples as well, like give us facts, give us figures, that kind of thing, where you can, or you can back it up, or just anecdotal information. I guess it might be, feelings of connection within and across communities are increased. So that could, like we said before, between neighbours and communities. So that might be, like you said, a lot of them don't know each other. It might be that loneliness and isolation, socialisation are decreased, so that feelings of belonging are increased. So it might be one of those two mission outcomes, it sounds like. The other thing to consider is, I know it's not essential, but it's definitely a priority, so how it would address the cost of living crisis. And I'm sure those people, like you said, a lot of them are on low income, or from families from low income, whichever that might be. So just think about how you're going to show how the project will address that as well. But bringing them together in an event where there's heating, they're going to be meeting each other, becoming less isolated, all that kind of thing. And like you said, it's not just one event as well, and that's not an issue if it was just one, but every couple of months. I don't know if Catherine's got anything to add, but on the face of it, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Definitely. Definitely.
Just to add to that, was that Bromley Mengap asking that question?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just to remind you, we have got the Bromley Volunteering Awards event coming up in June. So if you've got volunteers who you want to say thank you to, we are having an evening at the Bromley Central Library where those volunteers who are nominated, may receive an award, certificate, a little trophy, a thank you, and it'd be an evening with some refreshments and what have you. So get your nominations in. So all the information is on our volunteering side of our website. And I say it is a way of celebrating what volunteers do, because you're quite right. They do an awful lot and often don't get a great deal of thanks. So this is something that we try and do to give back each year.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, is there anything else?
So we'll send the slides round, and if you go on to the final slide, we've just got a link to Building Strong Communities, or if you just Google GLA Building Strong Communities Fund, the guidance is on there, the FAQs, the applications are there, the support sessions with our partners are there, and there's also a tab where Catherine mentioned earlier, you can view just headlines of like titles, really just a couple of sentences about what the projects are doing that we've already been funded in round 1 and 2, if you're interested in having a look at some of sort of the diverse projects that we've got going on at the moment.
But if there are no other questions, I don't want to have people hanging on. I'm sure they've got lots of other things that they could be getting on with. So all I'd like to do is say thank you very much to Amanda and Catherine this morning for giving up their time to provide an excellent presentation. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
To you for coming along, and thanks to everyone else for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, and get those applications in, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed that session. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.